Now, across in California, it's been a hot summer, and especially in the north of the state, they're being hit by devastating bushfires that have taken at least 6 lives. The state's also faced power shortages over the early part of the month as air conditioners churn through all those hot August nights. Now the US is seeing some of the same debates play out that we endured over last summer. To get a rational perspective on all of this, I spoke to Michael Shellenberger, the environmentalist and author of Apocalypse Never, Why Environmental Alarmism Hurts Us All. He joined me from California. Michael, let's start with the crisis California is facing now with the bushfires, or as you would call them, wildfires. Tell us about the debate linking them to climate change and how this plays into the history we know about California and fires at this time of the year.
Well, a lot of people have called these fires unprecedented, including our governor. However, when I interview the top forest scientists in California, they all emphasize that it's not unusual. They say it doesn't happen every year that you see fires like this that are started by lightning in the middle of the summer, but it happens every decade or so. And we have to get out of the idea, though, that fires are bad. California forests, for the most part, need fires to clear the underbrush and make room for new life. So historically, before industrialization, California had about 4.5 million acres burn every year. This year, we may have 1.5. So by any historical comparison, we're still very under where we were before industrialization, before the arrival of Europeans. And every scientist thinks that we actually need more fires in most of our forests rather than less.
This is exactly the debate we've seen in Australia over the past 6 months. The use of the word unprecedented when you dig out files and you go to scientific evidence to show that they were not unprecedented. So many in the debate, those just don't want to hear it. Subsequently, the area covered by the fires last summer in Australia have been revised down by 25%. And you get back to the situation where California, like southeastern Australia, similar climate, you have a vegetation and species that are specifically adapted to a fire-prone environment. In fact, as you say, reliant on it for their continued regeneration.
Well, right. And it was funny because today or yesterday, the governor and President Trump made an agreement to double the amount of underbrush, we call it, that is removed from forests, either through prescribed burns, through fires, or through mechanical means. And everybody in California is a very liberal state, very progressive state, was criticizing President Trump for suggesting that we needed to rake our forests. But that's effectively what we've just agreed to do, along with more prescribed burns. So while there's a lot of rhetoric about climate change, when you look at how the politicians are responding, they know they need to get more control of the situation. And that's the pragmatic path that ultimately we're going to have to take.
Yeah, if you want to protect buildings and human habitation, you have to reduce fuel around those areas. It's just common sense. We're going to see a greater focus on that in Australia too now in the wake of a couple of inquiries. The other debate in California that mirrors what's gone on in this country is the push to renewable energy and how in the summer, when there is high demand for electricity, it's left you short.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think people in California are learning a lesson in the importance of reliable electricity. You can't go shut down all of your reliable natural gas and nuclear power plants and try to rely solely on solar and wind. It's just too unreliable. California saw its electricity rates rise 6 times more than the rest of the United States over the last decade because of the transition to renewables. And the reason is the unreliability. So the same factors that were behind a very close call with mass blackouts last week or 2 weeks ago now was the same reason that electricity is so expensive, which is that we've just become too reliant on solar and wind. And that's with those two energy sources just providing about 1/3 of our power. Imagine what would happen if you tried to power half or 2/3 of our power on solar and wind alone. So clearly, I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that we need reliable sources of energy.
And when you don't have that in California, as some of the states in South Australia do, you import it from another state where there might be reliable generation. What is the debate? Where do you think it's going in California and across the US more broadly? Where are you going to get that additional guaranteed generation? Is it going to be nuclear? Is it going to be gas?
They've already said in California that they're going to work to keep natural gas plants that they had planned to retire online. We think it's obvious, since we had a shortfall of about a 4,000 megawatt shortfall, we think it's obvious you would keep your 2,200 megawatt nuclear plant online rather than shut it down. And what's really, I think, really embarrassing and unethical is the claim that shutting down the nuclear plant is somehow part of a climate change agenda. They're going to replace that zero pollution nuclear plant with natural gas, which is better than coal, but it still produces carbon emissions. So, you know, we've been advocating that they keep the nuclear plant open now for 5 years. We may need to advocate another 5 years, which is when it's supposed to shut down. But in the meantime, they seem happy to talk about climate change in the morning and then approve continued operation of natural gas plants in the afternoon.
It is absolutely irrational, as we've come to expect in these debates. Thanks so much for joining us again, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
California is just a big South Australia, really.